Hey, good evening and welcome to first year birthday edition of Data Jazzers live from Redmond. So Nicola is missing today. Maybe he'll join. He's traveling, but Jay is here with us. And Jay, thanks for bearing with us for a full year.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Not a problem at all.
And why this one is so special. So our first birthday as a podcast, Data Jazzers live from Redmond. And then I think it's the first release you are directly responsible for, Jay, that we are
Not
presenting here.
the feature. Yes. The
Yes,
feature we picked this time around is the first feature I think that we picked that I'm responsible for. So it's not my first feature, but the first feature you
of
picked to
course.
talk about. Yes.
And that's why it's a great pleasure to have Jeffrey with us. Jeffrey, welcome.
Hey guys, thank you. Thank you for having me,
I
host.
I know you are not so often a guest of different podcasts. That's why it's a pleasure to have you here and to chat with you about the feature. I think I was first introduced to a year and a half ago or something like that. I was in a conference in Chicago and Jay first presented it.
Uh,
Yep. I still know
And
that. I still remember that session. Yes.
back then we all anticipated, yeah, it will come any minute now. And a year and a half later, it's here. Jeffrey, can you tell us what was happening in a backend all that time? How hard work was it?
um, yeah, this is really one of the actually all J's features are long-running features, right? The previous one, the proxy model, also is like 2 years. So J is a champion of those like big features. Here, yeah, it's obviously a lot of work, and I was surprised that Jay already leaked the secret a year and a half ago. But back then, we already actually spent more than a year like designing the feature by that time. So this is really a really long running feature. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I joined the Power BI team in April 2020. And in May of that year, I started looking around for like, what are the big things in my area that we should be working on? And then that's where I found Visual Calcs. So in that year, I think in June of that year, we started the conversations with Jeffrey and others, uh, talking, designing, writing stuff, because our first update to our management about what we were doing is from June 2021. So that means that at least at June 2021, we were writing code for this. So we spent about a year talking about it and writing documents and architecting and whiteboarding and having discussions amongst Jeffrey and others before we actually wrote code. So we started writing code approximately in June 2021. I can go look at the actual first check-in if we can want this. But anyway, so that's where it started. And then in 2022, we made so much progress that I was like, I
We need to
believe
share
we
it.
are. Yeah, we need to share it. I need to check whether we're still on the right track. And that's where I went out. I told the team, I told Jeffrey, I told others, like, hey, I'm doing this once on a small conference, not getting it recorded, just checking to see what people think. And that's the session you were in August. And that's what you just referred to. So yeah, it was a bit
Yeah.
risky. But I was like, we're making so many choices along the way of this feature. I want to make sure that we're still in the right direction. So that's what we did. But yeah, it's been a long time.
And just before we started, I was speaking with Jay why this is important. And from my point of view, it's and Jeffrey, you're a great party here. So what is the most complex for most of the users of Power BI is DAX. Can you tell me first, from your point of view, why is it so complex?
The real reason is because uh, the DAX measures is reusable, right? So reusability is not free. So we have to build this row context, the filter context, but all of this is for a reason because the measure expressions need to be fully reusable. And it's not tied to any particular report and visual, right? So in order to learn to achieve this great flexibility, you also have to have the responsibility of learning some hard concepts that simply don't exist in other programming languages, right? So measure fundamentally, you can think about it, it's like a function that takes like any number of parameters, right? You can set filter on any of the columns in the report, in the model, and then the measure will respond to it. So this kind of power is not free. On the other hand, for many new users and coming to the Power BI, they come to the many other reporting tools. It's not working this way, right? And so when you first start on writing your first calculation, you are not thinking about the reusability. You just want to say, give me some numbers, and on this visual I'm looking at right now. And so I would say DAX is hard. Truly is really the fundamental reason is because the abstract concept of the context, which is necessary for the reusability, and but the visual calculation is a great complement to DAX measures because there are lots of calculations that just naturally belong to a visual, belong to a report, and that's also most of the other reporting tools supported their applications. So it's a great mix of this. And so this is a great way to remove some unnecessary difficulties in DAX. But the necessary part, the reusability part, is still obviously powerful, useful, and people will still need to learn. But they don't learn. They no longer need to learn on day one when they use Power BI.
Right. And I think that's important, very important. We're not taking away the measures or whatever. We still fully expect you to learn measures and reusability and complexity that comes with that, as Jeffrey just described, but not at day one. Maybe also not at day 5, right? Maybe at day 100, 50, whatever, right? Whenever you're ready for it. So think about it as like a ramp towards this complexity instead of us dropping you in the deep end, right? Like, here you go, just learn to swim. No. We kind of give you training wheels and grow you towards where the complexity lives. Not taking that complexity away. That is still there, but just postponing the moment. Or as I like to say, fattening the donut. I've been saying that a while as well. It's like, if you think about DAX as a donut, we fatten the donut, the rim that you can walk on the donut happy without worrying about the complexity that lives in the middle and the center where the hole is. We just made it way broader with visual calcs.
Yeah, that's a nice analogy, and I have to admit, when I saw it first and when I tried it now when it's out, I'm always, Jay, knowing you, connecting two things. So visual and calculations, I need a pie chart and be able to calculate on it. Will it happen?
I mean, we were talking about it over lunch actually yesterday with the team, and if I had all the power in Power BI, I would absolutely make some kind of like Easter egg that if you try to use a pie chart, that it maybe moves out of the way to some random location so you can never get to it, or if you do something with the pie chart that with a visual calc that it says like no, you can't do this. I don't know. I don't have that kind of power. Pie charts, I don't like them, you know that. But hey, our customers like them. There's loads of people that actually like using them. So who am I to tell them no? I just make a joke of it. So obviously it will work with visual calculations. We're not taking away the pie charts at all or whatever. Like obviously it will work with visual calculations. It's just my personal preference that you should not use a pie chart. But who am I?
Yeah, Jay will allow visual calculations on pie chart, but he would take the pie chart away.
if I had all the power, I would do that, or at least I would, and that's what we started talking about yesterday. That one of the engineers was actually maybe interested in like writing a piece of code that when you move the mouse to the pie chart, then it would switch places with a random other chart, so you could basically never get to it.
And just joke aside, what would you say, Jay? People are now, it's released, they're trying visual calcs. I know in my company, lots of users are trying it. How would you address a concern that whoever owns the model now could lose some control over what's happening and so on, because business users now will be empowered to do things by themselves, even not knowing DAX.
Well, I mean, they still know DAX, right? Because they're still using DAX. But they don't know all the complexities that come with DAX. So honestly, I think it's a good thing that we give more power to the end users. So what I would like to say for people that feel like they lose control here is actually, are you really that happy that you want to do all those mundane calculations for your business users, right? When your business users ask you, can you please add this calculation for me? Can you please do this? Can you please add this small thing for this one-off chart that I need over here, right? Is that really where you want to spend your time as a professional Power BI developer, right? My answer to that question would be no. Like, that is not probably why you are excited to work with Power BI. So I think the fact that we give the business users the control to do this on their own, these simple one-off things for a chart or a couple charts or one report, without having to bother you, frees up your time to do more interesting things, right? Hard DAX, complicated DAX, for example, if that's your thing, or improve that semantic model performance or scalability requirements, the more complicated, interesting tasks. So I believe it's actually a good thing that people, yes, you lose some control, but also you get rid of all the mundane tasks that people keep asking you for and that just eat your time. I don't know, Jeffrey, what do you think?
Well, first of all, absolutely, I agree with Jay. And I would say one of the reasons why people like Power BI is you are not only using Power BI to create the report. It's not just a pure reporting tool, right? Most people, before they create the final report, they find the final calculations, they need to play with their data. They need to try different kind of things. Power BI has always been a great and a super flexible tool to allow you to play with your data, try out the different calculations, try out the different layout of the report before you even focus on the final report and the final calculations you want to share with the others, right? So, and during that process, so it's a perfectly normal for many people want to do one-off calculations that naturally belong to a visual instead of you have to create a measure first before you drag it into your report. I always find it annoying that a lot of times I just need to do a quick dirty calculation for something I never mean to share with anybody. I just want to understand the data, understand the underlying things. And it's just so annoying that I have to define something that show up on the right-hand side and then drag it in. Even though I'm just looking at the visual right now, I want to add something here, something quick and dirty. And so it's just a visual calculator. Just give people one more flexibility, a big one, but it's in the end, it doesn't take anything away from the existing users but make your life even easier than before. Power BI is already make a lot of things are super easy, and especially doing this one ad hoc, one-off things that don't mean to be shared with other people. And now it's just getting easier and faster too.
I completely agree there. I know, at least for me, I always have a separate page and a separate folder in a model to create those one-time visuals, measures, just to test out things and try it. And the most problematic part is you always tend to forget to delete those.
So now you can just delete the visual after you're done and they're gone.
Yeah. At least now, even if you forget to delete it, it doesn't pollute your model, right? It doesn't show up in your model, right?
No. And they're not being used, they're not being executed, they're not persisted, right? So I also got a lot of questions about that, and it's interesting because they are like measures, but they're also not like measures, that they're not stored in the model, they don't pollute the model, but they also are a lot like calculated columns where they are executed in a row by row or column by column fashion, right? Because you can switch that around with visual calcs, which you can do in a calc column. But then people think, oh, they're like calc columns, so that means that their results are stored inside the report file. No, they're not pre-calculated. They're only calculated when necessary. So in that regard, they're like measures again, right? So it's like this. We took basically the combinations of both, and then rolled them into one, right? So yes, it's row by row like a calc column. That's why it's easy to see the results. That's why it's easy to comprehend why this is happening, how the results are being calculated, at least for me. But no, they're not pre-calculated, not bloating your model. They're only being calculated when necessary, as executed, evaluated as the measure, like on demand, right? When the visual is being painted onto the screen. So I believe it's a great marriage of the two. I also want to recognize that it's just a start, right? I mean, as you know, August, what I teased in Chicago that year, that is nowhere near of what you have today, right? So we still have a long way ahead of us to get to that vision of like not having to type, like almost an Excel-like behavior where you can just point and click to stuff and stuff happens. We don't have that today in the preview. So we're just getting started. There will be loads of bugs. There will be loads of problems. But I think it's a good thing that's out there now.
That's a first question coming from audience. Can we use conditional formatting on it?
Not yet. No, and this is a great example. There's loads of limitations. If you go to our docs, I'll just pull up the link. So if you go to our docs, then you'll see that there's loads of documentation and lots of limitations documented, and those are mostly document limits that we want to remove. Some of them are design choices that we made right now. For example, visual calculations are not stored in the model, right? And all of those can be challenged, but some of them are just actual limitations, like, no, you can't use format strings. No, you can't do conditional formatting. That's just a matter of time before we implement those. But a couple of those limitations are more like design choices that we made, which of course we can change, but it will be harder to change than just closing the gaps, right? So conditional formatting is absolutely the gap.
And Jeffrey, how hard was the work behind this, and how big was the team working on DAX changes that were required to implement visual calcs?
Actually, the vast majority of the work is on the front end, because by the name of visual calc, and the Power BI has a ton of visuals, right? And each visual is, you can also have many different configurations, right? You can have x-axis, y-axis, you can have legends, you can have small multiples. So surprisingly, the vast majority of the work is on the front end, not in the back end, on the DAX engine side. And yes, on the DAX engine side, we also have many developers involved, but they are not as like fully dedicated to only the visual calculations project. They work on different parts of AS engine, and but we do have a dedicated team from the client side to add support to one visual at a time, to one particular configuration. There are many configurations of a visual at a time. So that's why it's been a multi-year project already, and it's still going forward to add support to, let's say, the format, the conditional formatting, and some of the other big, like the field parameters. Those are like obviously highly desirable features. So.
And can you tell us, Jeffrey, about those new functions in DAX added there for, I don't know, was it just for purpose of visual calcs, or was it there but not visible?
I'll first let Jay, those are Jay's favorite functions. I'll let Jay talk about them. I'll add some afterwards.
So, I mean, the way I like to think about it is we build the window functions first, right? So in December 2022, we actually showed you the window functions, right? We released them, which I got a lot of feedback from people there saying, don't you have more important things to do? It's like, why are you building this? Like, isn't there stuff that you should be doing in a product that is more pressing than this? And the reason why, and of course, lots of people also love that, but the reason why is people didn't see the full picture, right? So the full picture is I was actually showing you the Lego pieces that we were using to put together visual calculations, but I was not at liberty to then say, hey, this is for visual calculations. Maybe you, August, because you saw it in October of that year in Chicago, you connected the dots. You was like, But nobody else, like apart from that small audience or somebody knowing like an MVP or anybody under NDA, that was actually what was happening. So for me, the real value here is in those simple functions on top of those, like the extra layers that we build on top of that, the running sum, the moving average, where I laid down the rule to Jeffrey and others to say, hey, I want these functions to be very simple. And I think I came up with a rule of maximum 4 parameters. Didn't I, Jeffrey? I think I did. I think I said no.
You are going to change it soon based on feedback.
Yes, I will take it 2 to 5. But the rule I gave the team is 4 to keep it simple. Like, I find a way to make this work with just 4 parameters maximum, right? I don't want to see any function that has more than that. And now we're going to change that based on feedback. Fine, whatever, that's great. But that is what I try to instill in the team as well. Is like, let's keep this as simple as we can, with still not sacrificing too much flexibility. So I really think like running sum and moving average, that kind of level of functions with previous, I think if I had to pick a favorite, I think it's the expand function now. I just love that function. Wow. The fact that I can just walk down the hierarchy and walk up, I think it's great. I love it. Yeah, and then we're not done, right? On top of this first floor, we can build other floors. So yeah.
Let me add. So why I love those functions, and this is another reason why people call DAX is hard. Okay, so basically, some of the most intuitive things were hard in DAX. By intuitive, I mean I already add, let's say, cells to my chart, right? So I'm looking at these numbers, let's say over time, some time sequence, and then all I want to do is do a running sum, or I just want to compare the number at now minus the number right before me, right? Those kind of, for people, it's a super intuitive things. Why is that hard in DAX? That's because before visual calculations, all the measures, even though you can define a measure, just do a year-over-year comparison, those kind of like a period over period growth type of calculations. Even though you put it right next to the number that shows the actual value for each year or for each time period, these two measures, despite sitting side by side on the same visual, are fundamentally independent of each other. People don't get it. Right? They thought that they were just taking the number to the left minus the number to the upper left corner. They thought they were doing that, but it's actually no, because every DAX measure is fully reusable. So I can add this year-over-year growth all by itself without sitting next to any other the current period calculations. So many newcomers, they don't get it. So they found that this aspect of DAX that should be easy, actually extraordinarily hard. Right. So window functions. So fundamentally at the abstract level, in the past, DAX is always hard when you try to do a calculation across rows. So if you imagine a data matrix as columns, which has the different measures, the different calculations, and the rows being the grouping columns, if you imagine a layout like that, DAX has always been hard when you try to do some calculation by scanning across the rows. And that was just always a hard thing. But in people's mind, that should be easy. I already have those numbers there. You are looking at it. Why is that hard? I remember it also caused unnecessary performance issues. I remember in some years ago, someone is trying to do a year-to-date, try to export a year-to-date data. It's only have a few thousand rows. Because it's a few thousand, it was very slow. It is so embarrassing to the point that I could export that data without the running sum to Excel and then do a running sum. It's faster that way. And so now we can, so we finally have introduced this visual calc that is, you can easily do this across row calculations, be it like a moving average, running sum, year-over-year comparison, all period over period comparisons, all these kind of things. And now this is truly using the numbers you are looking at instead of measures that are actually behind the scene recalculating everything that you didn't even realize is happening.
It sounds so easy when you are explaining it. I know when Windows function came out, when you, Jeffrey, put out the blog on window functions. I think I read it at least 3 times before I comprehended what is actually happening.
Uh-huh.
But when you are explaining, it sounds so easy.
Hey, and that's the
It should
reality.
be easy.
Hey, and now you understand the reality of my work and my life, August. It's like they explain it. Like Jeffrey is very good at explaining very complicated things very easily. But then once you start like comprehending it yourself, you go like, it is not that easy at all. It's like processing
Yeah.
time for me is like whenever I meet with Jeffrey and we talk about those designs, I'm always like processing in my head very fast because otherwise I just lose track. So I'm glad
Just
to hear I'm not alone.
listening to Jeffrey analogy now explaining 2 columns on a chart, one next to each other, and just imagining how many times did I struggle trying to actually replicate those things that we can do now.
Yes.
It was extremely painful and hard.
Yeah.
And now, thanks to this, we can do it.
Right. And of
What's
course, there's things that we still need to do. Like, for example, it's all great, but you did this on one visual. What if you have 5 visuals that actually need the same thing? You are a business user. You don't know how to do this in a measure. Can we give you some way of like easily reusing that visual calc across those visuals instead of like requiring you to write a measure just because you need to reuse it? And that's definitely something that we have to improve, and we have to think about like what's the story there without making it too complicated again. So.
And that was just what I was planning to ask.
Oh, sorry.
What's in front of us? What we can expect? Of course, what you can share.
Well, I mean, there's loads of limitations today, and most of those limitations will go away. Right? Field parameters support, conditional formatting, format strings, all the hot topics that people are asking about. The other things that we want to work on is discoverability from an admin perspective. Like, you know, if the admin uses the metadata APIs that we provide, ideally they should also discover visual calcs in there, right? Like if you're an admin, you want to know which visual calcs people are building because, hey, if you see the same visual calc over and over and over again, that could actually be a candidate for you to work with your semantic model owners to say, hey, this should actually be a measure, right? People are creating the same thing over and over again. Let's discover that, number one, and then elevate that and provide that, supply that to them in this enterprise semantic model so they don't have to use the visual calculations, right? So that's another thing. What point and click, right? So we wanna get a step closer to Excel-like behavior where, you know, this grid that we have today in visual calcs is really static, right? It's just a display of the numbers. Ideally, we wanna allow you to interact with that, maybe, I don't know, by selecting a column to point to it to fill that column in as your parameter, like you can do in Excel. If you're doing a formula, you can just click on a cell and say, hey, that's a cell reference to the column. Like I want to do a previous over sales instead of having to write sales, no, just sales. Or if you have visual calculations, click on the column so I can get into edit mode on that calc, right? Other stuff that we're thinking about is some kind of explaining mode where like, hey, I see this number now. I see there's a cell that says 42. Can I somehow see how that 42 was created? Like what values did it take to get to number 42 over here? So that kind of stuff is what is ahead of us, making it even more transparent and easier to understand why these numbers are the way they are.
I'm sure on my next question, I will get one additional item on your list, and that's Jeffrey for you. And we ask all of our guests, from your point of view, what's the number one missing feature in Power BI at the moment?
Missing for Power BI is not DAX anymore, right? So
it's entire ecosystem, so even DAX.
It could also be DAX.
Well, it's not a missing. It's just like it's a feature that's only coming to Power BI, but they do need to be greatly enhanced. It's all this AI related stuff, right? because Power BI is all about the self-service. It's not all about, but it's a very flexible and heavily favoring those self-service guys. And with this AI boom, a lot of the things AI should absolutely greatly simplify many of the workflows within Power BI, not just DAX, but including DAX, but also many of the how do you do this kind of things. So this is great, a great fit for all these modern AI technologies. So I would say AI should play a very bigger role in the long run, including visual calculations, right? One of the reasons why it's hard for AI to generate measures, for example, is AI don't think abstractly, right? So AI is great at mimicking patterns, especially when you have a concrete context. AI is doing a marvelous job, and the visual calculation naturally belong there. You have the full context, you have the data, you have a small number of columns. It's very well constrained and defined. It's not only making like the human easier to do, it's also making AI. AI is much like a human nowadays in a sense, right? So if it's easy for the human, it's easy for the AI in that sense.
I'm just waiting now. When you mentioned, I'm waiting in Power BI button to appear when I'm creating a DAX measure. Ask Jeffrey, like a co-pilot.
We were joking about that a while ago. We called it Jeffrey as a service. But yeah, Jeffrey wasn't a big fan, which obviously I can understand. No, I think Jeffrey's right. It's the AI stuff that will absolutely help as well. But I think there's also groundwork that we still have to do. So we won't be banking on AI fully for just visual calculations, right? There's also situations which you don't want to, are not allowed to use AI features in the future. So the groundwork also needs to exist. But absolutely, I see a great combination of AI with visual calculations as well, and all across the board. Like, for example, it would be great. I'm okay-ish with DAX. I mean, we have the expert over here, so I'm not going to say I'm good. I'm okay-ish, and if I get stuck, I call Jeffrey. That's what I do, and I honestly do. And he helps me out every single time, so far at least. But I'm not a great data visualizations or report designer. I have my opinions about bad visualizations, pie charts. It would be great for me if I can build those charts as ugly as they are, but functionally correct, right? I can do that part. I can do the DAX. I can make the charts functionally as I want them. And then I could ask a co-pilot to say, make this look good. That would be awesome. Make this look good for a CEO of, or use this color coding from our like brand, brand library, right? Or this is about, I don't know, farming. So make it look good in that theme. That would be awesome if we can do something like that. And I think Copilot is actually capable of doing that kind of stuff as well, right? Because it can be very creative, generating new images, new videos even these days. So why not generate a report design? That would make me a better report designer. Or at least not me. My work look better.
I'm completely there with you. And yeah, we are 4 minutes over time, and I don't know, time is going so fast when we are discussing interesting topics and great new features. And I don't know, I invite all the entire audience out there, so put a comments later on, even what you think about visual calculations. It will help Jay and Jeffrey to continue developing, to know what's bothering entire community. And Jeffrey, want to thank you a lot for you to joining us. And Jay, I hope we'll celebrate another birthday in a year going this tempo.
Well, we'll try to do it every month, right? So yeah, let's keep it up. I want to add, just give me a sec. Yeah, I want to pull in the link for the feedback, so I can just point that in the chat. So I don't know why the link doesn't work when I paste it. I hope you can see that. It's aka.ms/visual-calculations-feedback. If you go there, please leave your feedback. That's where we collect the feedback. But of course, also feel free to find us on social media and talk to us. Tell us what's happening and what you like and what you don't like about this feature. We need your input. We need you to jump in now. Help us try this. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you hate. Tell us what you would love to see, and then we can build this full feature and bring it to general availability eventually. So, yep, that's it.
Yeah, I want to again thank August for having me on your show, and thank you Jay for introducing me to August to August show. And so yeah, it's always a pleasure to talking to Power BI users and connect with the community directly. It's always fun to see how people are using the product and their wishes. And as Jay has said, because we're in public preview, so we have a lot of leeway of making changes without worrying too much about the backward compatibility. So this would be a great time to give us to give it a try and then give us feedback. So we'll definitely listen to everyone's feedback and make adjustment. We already made adjustment, by the way, since the past couple of weeks. So we have actually made quite big changes based on the early feedback. So it's always great to try out, especially for a complex, very like a deep feature like this, to give us early feedback during the public preview period. So
that's all the good news. Yeah, and with that we can close this one, and thank you both again for participating and for sharing with the audience out there what's new and what's coming in visual calculations.
Yeah, stay tuned. There's more updates coming soon. So see ya.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.